It was Friday night, March 22nd, 1989, when Sarah's life changed in a single heartbeat. She was only 34 years old, a young widow trying to keep her world together, trying to raise three identical 6-year-old children alone. Triplets. Emma, Lucas, and Grace. Three bright sets of matching eyes. Three voices always chattering at the same time. Three hearts connected in a way only triplets understand. Three children who depended on her for everything. But since her husband Daniel had passed away from a sudden heart attack 3 years earlier, everything had grown heavier. The bills, the rent, the food, the clothes, the stares, the judgment, and the whispers behind her back. 3 kids at once? Must be hard, must be expensive, must be overwhelming. And it was. Still, she never imagined it would lead to this. That afternoon, when she walked home after another long shift at Miller's Hardware, Sarah felt something in her chest drop. All her clothes, furniture, toys, photographs, everything she owned, sat piled on the sidewalk getting wet under the first drops of rain. Her landlord and brother-in-law, Marcus, stood at the doorway wearing a stiff expression, as if he already knew she wouldn't accept what he was about to say. "Sarah, we can't wait anymore," he said. "The house is already rented. You have to leave." "But Marcus," she pleaded, her voice shaking as the triplets gripped her coat sleeves. "They're your own niece and nephew. They're only 6 years old. We have nowhere to go. Please, at least let us stay until morning." "That's not our problem anymore," said Jennifer, his wife, stepping forward with cold eyes. "You're young. Start over somewhere else." And with that, the door shut, the lock clicked, and the first real crack inside Sarah's chest appeared. Within minutes, the rain grew stronger, slamming against their faces as thunder shook the ground. Sarah pulled her children close, trying to shelter them with her own body while dragging a heavy suitcase behind her. Emma held Lucas's hand. Lucas held Grace's. Their steps matched naturally as their small shoes splashed through puddles. "Mama, where will we sleep?" Emma asked. "Mama, I'm cold," Lucas whispered. "Mama, I'm scared," Grace added softly. Sarah didn't have an answer. They tried the pharmacy awning, but Mr. Henderson chased them away. Then they walked to the Greyhound bus terminal, but it was closed. Every attempt to find shelter failed, and the rain continued without mercy. By the time they reached the edge of town, all 3 children were shivering so hard their teeth chattered. Sarah knew she had to do something. She couldn't let her triplets spend the night on the streets. She remembered a dirt road leading out toward the rural homesteads. Maybe there was an abandoned barn, a porch, anything with a roof. So she led her children down that muddy road, each step heavier than the last. The storm grew louder, the wind colder, the children weaker. Emma tried helping with the suitcase. Lucas tried cheering his sisters with silly stories. Grace tried not to cry. But all 3 were exhausted, their little sneakers soaked through, their legs trembling. Then, in the distance, they saw it. A single yellow light, glowing from a house far down the road. "Mama, look," Lucas said with wide, hopeful eyes. "Maybe someone can help us," Grace whispered. Sarah froze for a moment. It was late, nearly 2 o'clock in the morning. What kind of person would open their door to strangers at this hour? What if the people inside were dangerous? What if the man of the house didn't like strangers, didn't like children, didn't like triplets? But then a loud thunderclap exploded above them, and all 3 children hugged each other tightly, trembling from fear. "I can't walk anymore, Mama," Emma sobbed. "Me neither," Lucas said, tears mixing with rain. "I'm too tired," Grace whispered. Sarah looked at her 3 shivering children. 3 identical faces filled with fear, and something inside her hardened with determination. She wasn't going to lose them to the cold. She wasn't going to let the world swallow them. "We're going to that house," she said. "We're going to ask for help." The walk felt endless. The mud clung to their shoes. The rain soaked their hair and clothes. But they finally reached the porch, where the warm light from inside spilled through a window. Through the storm's roar, they heard a radio playing softly. Randy Travis singing about love lasting forever. Sarah took a deep breath and knocked. 3 soft knocks, then 3 harder ones. She heard footsteps. Heavy, slow, steady. A man's deep voice came from behind the door. "Who's there?" Sarah swallowed hard. "Please, sir," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm Sarah Bennett. I'm here with my 3 children. We're soaked and have nowhere to go. Please, we just need somewhere dry." For a long moment, the only sound was the storm. Then she heard locks turning. 1, 2, 3. The door opened. A tall man with graying hair, a worn flannel shirt, and tired but kind eyes stood before them. He looked at Sarah, then at the 3 children standing in a perfect row, 3 identical frightened faces, 3 small bodies shaking in the cold. "Good Lord," he murmured. "Triplets." He stepped back instantly. "Come in," he said, "all of you, quickly." Quote, and in that moment, without knowing it, the storm brought Sarah Bennett and her triplets straight into the home and the heart of the man who would change their lives forever. The moment Sarah and the triplets stepped inside, warmth wrapped around them like a blanket. The house smelled of wood smoke and fresh coffee. The cast-iron stove glowed softly in the corner. For the first time in hours, the storm outside sounded far away. The tall man closed the door quickly, shutting out the cold rain. His eyes moved from Sarah to the 3 identical children now dripping water all over his wooden floor. "You must be freezing," he said. "I'm Ezekiel Hawthorne. Let me get you towels." He hurried down the hallway, boots thudding against the floorboards. Sarah stood there shaking, not sure if it was from the cold or from the overwhelming relief of being safe at last. The triplets huddled together, their small hands gripping each other tightly. Ezekiel came back with an armful of clean towels. "Here," he said gently. "Dry them off first." Sarah knelt and wrapped each child carefully. Emma leaned into her mother's chest. Lucas's lips were still trembling. Grace clung to her sleeve, silent but scared. "Come with me," Ezekiel said. "I have some clothes they can wear." Sarah hesitated. She didn't want to invade his home more than she already had, but Ezekiel gave her a steady, reassuring look. "It's all right," he said softly. "You're safe here." He led them to a hallway closet filled with old children's clothes, matching sweatpants, shirts, jackets. Sarah touched one of the shirts, surprised. "These are the same size for all 3. Ezekiel paused. "They belong to my son," he said quietly. "His friends used to come over a lot. I kept extra clothes for them." There was sadness in his voice, the kind that came from a wound time had never fully healed. Sarah didn't ask more. She simply thanked him and took the clothes to the bathroom where she helped the triplets change. Despite the chaos, the wet socks, the mud, the tangled sleeves, the children finally looked warm and dry. Their identical faces softened with relief. "Mama," Emma whispered, "can we stay?" Quote, "I like this place," Lucas added, touching the soft towel. "Me too," Grace said, leaning her head on her mother's shoulder. Sarah pressed her lips together. "We'll see, sweethearts." When they came back to the kitchen, Ezekiel had set the table. Hot cocoa steamed in 3 matching mugs. A plate of warm, homemade bread sat beside butter and huckleberry jam. Scrambled eggs waited on another plate. "You didn't need to do all this," Sarah said, touched by the sight. "I did," Ezekiel answered simply. "Children need to eat, especially after a night like this." All 3 kids sat in a perfect row, their movements matching naturally, all reaching for bread at the same time. Ezekiel chuckled softly. "Never seen triplets up close before," he said. "It's like watching one heart move in 3 bodies." Sarah smiled. "They've always been like that." For several minutes, the house was filled with the sweet sound of children eating hungrily. Warmth returned to their cheeks. Color returned to their lips. Grace whispered, "This is the best bread ever." Quote, Ezekiel watched them with a soft expression. "My mother taught me to bake," he said. "She said, good bread makes the world less heavy." When the children were full and sleepy, they leaned against each other, eyelids drooping. "You need rest," Ezekiel said. "There's a room here with a big bed. The 3 of them can sleep together." I can't let you give us a whole room," Sarah said. "You've done so much already." "It's not trouble," Ezekiel replied. "It's what anyone should do." He walked them to the spare bedroom. It was simple. One large wooden bed, a patchwork quilt, and photos on the wall. One photo showed Ezekiel younger, standing beside a smiling woman and a boy about the age of the triplets. "My wife, Ruth, and our son, Caleb," he said quietly. "They passed away 4 years ago." "I'm so sorry," Sarah whispered. She understood that kind of pain. Ezekiel nodded and stepped back. "Let them rest. You too." When the door closed, Sarah tucked the children in. They curled close to each other, naturally forming their little triangle of comfort. She kissed their foreheads, all identical, all precious. "Mama," Emma murmured, half asleep, "is this our new home?" Quote, "Can we stay forever?" Lucas whispered. "I like Uncle Ezekiel." Grace sighed softly. "We'll talk about it tomorrow," Sarah said, smoothing their hair. "Sleep now." Within minutes, the triplets were asleep, their breathing soft and synchronized. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed for a long moment, letting the safety of the room wash over her. Then she stepped outside quietly. She found Ezekiel in the kitchen, washing dishes. The radio played low, a gentle country tune drifting through the house. "Ezekiel," she said softly, "I don't know how to thank you." He didn't look at her right away. He washed the last plate, placed it in the rack, then turned around. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "Anyone should have helped you." But they hadn't. She remembered every closed door, every turn back, every cold stare. Ezekiel wiped his hands on a towel. "There's plenty of space here. Stay as long as you need. We'll figure things out." Sarah felt her throat tighten. This man, who had begun as a stranger, now felt like the first safe person she'd met in years. "Good night, Ezekiel," she whispered. "Good night, Sarah," he replied. When she returned to the bedroom, she slipped under the blanket beside her children. For the first time in a long while, she felt the heaviness in her chest lift. Outside, the storm still raged. But inside, there was warmth. There was safety. There was hope. And none of them knew yet that the stranger who opened his door that stormy night would become much more than a shelter. He would become the person who changed their lives. Forever. Sarah woke early the next morning to the soft sound of children laughing in the kitchen. For a second, she didn't know where she was. Then everything from the night before returned. The storm, the fear, the knock on a stranger's door, and the warmth they found inside it. She sat up quickly, worried the triplets might be bothering Ezekiel. But when she entered the kitchen, her heart softened immediately. Lucas and Emma sat on tall chairs beside the stove, while Ezekiel flipped pancakes on an old cast-iron griddle. Grace stood next to him, holding a bowl of eggs with both hands, concentrating hard as if she were helping with a great mission. When all three saw her, their identical faces lit up. "Mama!" they shouted together. "Ezekiel makes pancakes like Papa used to," Emma said proudly. "And he lets me help flip them," Lucas added. "And he said I'm the best egg cracker," Grace whispered with a shy smile. Ezekiel turned, wearing an apron with faded flowers, clearly once belonging to his late wife, and gave Sarah a small smile. "Hope you slept well," he said. "Coffee's fresh." There was a softness in his eyes now, something warm and gentle. Maybe it was the presence of children in his kitchen again. Maybe it was the laughter he hadn't heard in years. Whatever it was, Sarah saw it and felt something inside her shift. They ate breakfast together. The triplets chattered, talking over each other as usual. Ezekiel listened with patience, never confusing who was who, already learning their little differences. Sarah watched him across the table, wondering how someone could be so steady, so calm, so gentle after so much loss. After breakfast, he showed them the homestead, the orchard, the garden, the chicken coop, the hen house, the old red pickup, the milk cow named Daisy. "Wow, she's huge!" all three children said at once. Ezekiel chuckled. "Want to learn how to milk her?" What followed was a series of hilarious attempts. Lucas too rough, Emma too careful, Grace giggling every time milk sprayed. But Ezekiel never lost patience. He held their hands gently, guiding them, teaching them, treating them with the respect most adults never bothered giving children. Sarah watched quietly, tears burning the back of her eyes. Daniel had once talked about wanting the triplets to grow up somewhere peaceful, somewhere with wide fields and animals. Something inside her whispered that maybe, after all the heartbreak, this was the place he'd dreamed of without knowing it. Everything felt too good to be true, and she wasn't wrong. Around noon, the sound of a truck rumbled down the road, a black 1987 Chevy Silverado. Sarah froze. It was Marcus. He got out wearing his pressed slacks and button-down shirt, looking out of place in the mud. "Stay here," Sarah whispered to the triplets. "Don't come out." Marcus approached with a forced smile. "Sarah, we need to talk." Ezekiel stepped onto the porch, wiping his hands on a rag. "Morning," he said calmly. "Name's Ezekiel Hawthorne." "Marcus Bennett," he replied stiffly, shaking his hand. "Sarah's brother-in-law." Then the mask dropped. "This situation is improper," he said. "A widow living alone with a man in the middle of nowhere, with 3 small children. People are talking. The church is concerned." Sarah felt her stomach twist. "Marcus, the children are safe. They're happy. They're fed." He ignored her. "You're not schooling them legally. You're living in sin. And I cannot allow my late brother's children to stay in this kind of environment. If you don't move back to town by the end of the week, I'll contact child services." Sarah felt the world tilt. Her knees nearly buckled. Social services. In 1989, unmarried men and women living under one roof could lose custody of children. Families had been split for less. And triplets? Authorities could separate them into different homes. Ezekiel stepped forward, jaw tight. "With all due respect, Mr. Bennett, you threw them out into a storm. I opened my door. Don't pretend this is about their well-being." Marcus's voice turned cold. "Appearances matter. And until you fix this situation, those children are at risk." After he drove away, dust rising behind his truck, Sarah collapsed on the porch steps. The triplets rushed to her, tears streaming down their little faces. They clung to her tightly, as if afraid someone would pull them apart right there. "Mama, we don't want to go," Emma sobbed. "We love it here," Lucas cried. "We love Uncle Ezekiel," Grace whispered. Ezekiel knelt beside them. "You're not going anywhere," he said, voice steady. "Not if I can help it." Quote, "When the children went inside, he sat beside Sarah. There's one way to fix this," he said quietly. Sarah turned to him, eyes full of fear. "What do you mean?" "The only thing that protects you protects the triplets, protects this home, from gossip, from the law, from your brother-in-law, is if you and I get married." Sarah stared at him, stunned. "Ezekiel, we barely know each other." "I know," he said softly, "but I've watched you these past days. I've seen your strength, I've seen your heart. And I've seen how your children look at me and how I look at them." He took a breath. "And Sarah, I've fallen in love with you." Her breath caught. "And I've fallen in love with them." Sarah covered her mouth with her hand, tears filling her eyes. "I'm not proposing out of pity," he continued. "And not because it's the easy solution. I'm proposing because it's the right one. Because I want to protect you. Because I want to protect them. And because I want to build a life with you." Sarah whispered, I think I love you too." Quote, "Then marry me," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Let me be their father. Let me be your husband. Let me give you all a home that no one can take away." The screen door creaked. All 3 triplets stood there in a perfect row, identical eyes wide with hope. "Are we getting married?" Emma asked. "Will he be our dad?" Lucas whispered. "I want him to," Grace added softly. Sarah laughed through her tears. "Yes," she said, "we're getting married." 3 days later, in a small church with a simple ceremony, they became a family. Ezekiel pledged to love Sarah, to protect Emma, Lucas, and Grace, to be a father in every way that mattered. And the triplets, in perfect unison, said, "We do," when the pastor asked if they accepted Ezekiel as their father. From that day forward, the Hawthorns were unbreakable. A family made not by blood, but by love, courage, and a door opened in a storm.